Time magazine and Putin's propaganda. In this video, we will discuss Russia's use of disinformation, manipulated imagery, and propaganda during the war with Ukraine, since like 2014, that's when the war started. And a little bit we'll talk about Time magazine, which sometimes even reliable sources could fail for Russian propaganda. Even Time magazine published a few really good articles disproving Russian propaganda and showing it for what it is. And we will talk a little bit about this famous article, which was published very recently, but Simon Schuster. Hello everyone, I'm Elena, welcome back to my channel Enough of Propaganda. Please like, subscribe, share, write comments. Let's make truth available for everyone. This is what helps to promote it on YouTube. Thank you. I would like to underline that Russian propaganda worked and was fighting informational war with the West for decades, even during Perestroika and Gorbachev times. And really hard it was fighting after Putin took power. For at least over 2 decades during Putin's time, Russian propaganda used Soviet tactics, KGB tactics, Nazi Germany tactics. Putin isn't smart enough to invent anything, so he's using what is already have been invented before him. The only new stuff he's using is internet and his trolls. That's about it. The rest of it was already invented for him. And since I have lived in USSR and Russia, and I seen it's done to me, I seen it's done to other people, and I have lived through this. So when I see it again, especially after the war in Ukraine started in 2014, it was really clear to me how it was done. And it is more hard for people from the foreign countries, especially from democratic countries. We here in democratic countries has a long tradition of freedom of speech and other valuable things. The problem is many people in democratic countries does not understand that freedom of speech is not a freedom of foreign propaganda, which paid, invented, created, and spread by foreign government, and it's intended to harm your country. This is not a freedom of speech. And this is what we will discuss today a little bit more in depth. And first of all, I want to show you this article. I wasted my time to read it, but I just on the example of this article, I want to show you how to verify information. Because sometimes even reliable sources, which I can't say Time is all that much, but it's very reliable source, but it's all right source. It's sometimes publishing really great articles, and I will show you a few. But we'll talk about this one. Look at the cover. Nobody believes in our victory like I do. Nobody. The word nobody, huge. It's written in a big, bold font, bigger than the rest of the text. It means nobody believes in Ukrainian victory. Looks like President Zelensky saying this. So, knowing for the people who followed what happened in Ukraine, it's obvious that it isn't true. But many people who doesn't, and many people doesn't know what happened. Many people doesn't know what's going on because people are busy, people get distracted, not everybody interested even in important things, which is war in Ukraine could turn out to be World War III. It can turn out to be nuclear war. Putin is threatening not just nuclear war. He is threatening our way of life, the rule of law, democracy, everything what our life is standing on. Everything we worked for all our lives, everything we built is threatened by Putin. Because if Putin can spit on international laws and any laws and just go and grab what he wants, it means anybody can. Anybody just can come and grab whatever you possess. Anybody can come and kill your family members, rape them, because Putin does it. Putin's army does it, and for him it's okay to do. It means China can go grab Taiwan. It means any dictator in the world could go and grab territory of any other country. Because there is no law, there is no rules, there is nothing. So this is important, what's happening. But many people, they just not follow it. And this is why it's so easy to manipulate, sometimes by Russian propaganda or some other foreign propaganda, to manipulate these people, because they simply don't know what is going on. And because Russian propaganda is good. So how it's done? This word means that nobody supports Ukraine, nobody supports Zelensky, and nobody believes that Ukraine gonna win, which is not true. It's quite the opposite. Ukraine is winning the war. And in my previous video and in many other videos, I proved it to you, I showed it to you, and Ukraine is winning. Yet, look at the text explaining what is in the article. It's been nearly 2 years. Russia still controls a fifth of Ukraine territory. Tens of thousands have been killed. Global support for the war is shrinking. So yes, it was over a year of the war. And Russia controls some territory of Ukraine, but narrative could be different. Narrative could be that in 9 years of the war, Russia is fighting, because it's not 2 years of the war. Russia started the war in 2014. In 9 years, Russia couldn't take Avdiivka, for example. 9 years Russia was trying to take that settlement and they can't. In 9 years, Russia captured some territory of Ukraine, but within first year of the war, Ukraine managed to get back over 50% of Russian occupied territory. Over 54% of Russian occupied territory Ukraine liberated. The article and description of it doesn't say anything about this. Global support for the war is shrinking. Based on what? Where did Mr. Schuster find that information? As far as I know, and it's proven fact, that the world supports Ukraine. Majority of the people in Canada, in the United States, Democrats, Republicans, everyone, exclude few people, a minority supports Ukraine. So there is no proofs of shrinking support for Ukraine. Basically everything in here isn't true, or it's twisted. Twisted to manipulate people to see big word nobody. And the next one, the lonely fight of Vladimir Zelensky. What lonely fight? Majority of Ukrainians, at some point different research was done, over 90% of Ukrainians supports their president. Why? Because for them it's a war for survival. And I have the videos about Putin's original plan exposed about Ukraine. Russia wanted to get rid of Ukraine. Putin wants to kill Ukrainians who disagree with him and the rest of them sent into some sort of a nowadays gulags. That is why Ukrainians are fighting. They are fighting for their survival and for their freedom, and for freedom to have their own country, speak their own language, which they were forbidden to speak for a while. And even in the USSR it was allowed, but you can't go to university at some time during USSR. For many years you couldn't get any position, government position, or study in university if you speak Ukrainian and you don't speak Russian. This was a genocide of Ukrainian people. And that is why Ukrainians support President Zelensky. But judging just by the cover of Time, just by the description of this article, the lonely fight of President Zelensky, it looked like he is all alone standing in the middle of the street and nobody supports him. This is not true, but this is what narrative this article trying to create. At this point, I wouldn't even bother to read it. But for the sake of the video, I did. Again, the name of the article saying, nobody believes in our victory like I do. Inside Vladimir Zelensky's struggle to keep Ukraine in the fight. Ukrainians wanted to fight because they defended themselves. Now they, not like they wanted to fight, they forced to fight. And Zelensky has nothing to do with it. He didn't start the war in Ukraine. Putin did. Ukraine is defending itself. And Zelensky not struggling because Ukrainians don't have any other choice. Like to fight and defend themselves. Or to die. That's a choice too. But for some reason they don't want to die. Strange, isn't it? Why wouldn't they want to die? So, the picture chosen also, everybody looking kind of down on Zelensky. Zelensky looked not all that particularly happy. Simon Schuster. So when I'm started to read articles like that, I'll check in the source. But this time we start from article and then check the source. I was counting in this article how many times Mr. Schuster quoting unknown sources. One person told me, one advisor said so, somebody said this and that. This is one of the signs when you see that in the article, when somebody said, expert says, don't say who they are, where they from, what experts, or what sources. He doesn't say who they are. Okay, let's look a little bit. So Zelensky had a meeting in the White House and this and that. And doesn't sound all that particularly happy. And so on. Exhaustion with the war rolls like a wave. Of course people would be tired fighting over 9 years of the war. And especially after full-scale invasion, it's over 600 days. And yeah, really, he can get disappointed that the weapons he promised not coming soon, that Ukrainian people has to die just because the West decided, well, we will give only these weapons, but we're not gonna get that weapons. And it's really hard for Ukraine to defend themselves without proper weapons. And sometimes they get enough weapons to defend themselves, but not enough to have a counteroffensive. And let's see, I count over like 17 or 20 times the author quoting unknown people. On my first day in Kiev, asked one member of his circle how the president was feeling. The response came without a second's hesitation. Angry. Who was that source? We don't know. Okay, next. Now he walks in, gets the updates, gives the orders and walks out, says one longtime member of his team. Who it is? Another tells me that most of all Zelensky feels betrayed by his Western allies. Blah, blah, blah. So it's already 3 times. Let's try play a game and you can write me in the comments how many times you counted. Then he quoting unknown sources. So basically that's all what you need to know about this article itself. It's all about creating a narrative. False narrative. But it looks legit just because it's published in time or just because it sounds legit. And in fact, it's not true. And the sources he quoting are known sources which nobody knows who they are. Well, I started to research who Simon Schuster is. Apparently, by Alena Shevchenko, posted some of his tweets from March 16, 2014. Just paid for a coffee in Russian rubles. Welcome to the new Crimea, people. Like it or not. How much is reliable? This is hard to say. But this is kind of sending a message that Mr. Schuster supports Putin. Another post. Roman was in Ukraine. This is the articles written by Schuster in the past. Now look at the titles. Violence in Ukraine. Can Russia or the West make it stop? Russia started it. Of course Russia can make it stop. Right-wing thugs are hijacking Ukraine's liberal uprising. Ukraine moved closer to civil war. No, Russia will not intervene in Ukraine. Well, Russia was there. This is article from 2014. And this man claiming that he has been in there at the time. Many Ukrainians want Russia to invade. None of it is true. I have research done by famous international institutes, include the Republican Institute and so on. I provide in this research in many of my videos, which saying exactly how many people wanted to return Crimea to Russia. 40% of Ukrainians who lived in Crimea, despite of their passport, considered themselves Russians. And at the same research, in 2014 and in 2011, 67% of people said that they want Crimea inside the Ukraine. Period. There is no question about how many Crimeans wanted Crimea to be part of Russia. 23%, roughly. That's about it. So, if the man been there, yeah, he might talk to 2 or 3 people, but this is not a reliable amount of people to make an assumptions like that. Judging by this the titles of the articles, I think that Roman was right. Simon Schuster was supporting and spreading Kremlin propaganda since at least 2014, when he was celebrating the annexation of Crimea. So just judging on what I said, there is no point to read the article, there is no point, unless you want to play a game and write how many times he quoting unknown sources. Somebody counted 14 times, I counted over 17 for sure. But you can try, I think it's more than that. Good luck. In the past, Time magazine put Putin's face on the cover and make him a person of the year, and basically supported his rise, the rise of Russian dictator. On the other hand, I want to tell you that, for example, several different other articles in Time magazine was straight to the point, and they was really valuable to fight Russian propaganda. This one, called Tucker Carlson, is only one part of Putin's disinformation war in the Western media. This article, written by Jeffrey Sonnenfeld and Stephen Tian, which from the Yale University and Yale School of Management and so on. And they are really who they are. So I researched them, and this is Jeffrey Sonnenfeld. I heard several of his speeches. He's really intelligent and really exactly who he said he is. So I have more trust of what he has to say. And this article is very valuable. I would recommend you to read it. It says, the Western media has shown a strange mix of courage and cowardice, as well as naivety and cynicism in their parroting of Putin's disinformation. On the other hand, the Murdoch-controlled Wall Street Journal has pursued the truth on Russia's economic implosion to the peril of his kidnapped Moscow-based reporter Evan Gershkovich. Paradoxically, in the aftermath of Tucker Carlson firing from the Murdoch-controlled Fox News last week, perhaps the loudest laments came from, of all places, the Kremlin, with Kremlin commentators monitoring the loss of anchor, who consistently echoed Putin's talking points to the point where the Russian state media often use reruns of Tucker's show. And this is true. And Tucker Carlson did a lot to help Putin. He's famous on Russia Today, which is completely government-funded Russian disinformation in your countries. I personally contributed to shutting it down in Canada, in my country. I don't want Russian disinformation in my country. And the later on article said that CNN, Aaron's Burnett, just showed how false declarations from Carlson that if there any single American who deserves scorn and indeed blame for the invasion of Ukraine, Joe Biden of all people. And ideologists within the Biden administration didn't want a negotiated peace in Ukraine. They wanted a regime change, war against Russia. Literally echoed word for word prior commentary from Kremlin spokespeople and Russian state media. And so on. So, even worse. Carlson repeated verbatim doctorate and false intelligence that there were 7 Ukrainian casualties for every Russian casualty, when in reality these numbers were invented. The product of pro-Putin former Navy technician named Sarah Bills, digitally altering leaked documents from the Discord trove and posting them online. I wrote an article on Quora about Sarah Bills, and Jake Bro actually posted about her as well. She is US Navy, former US Navy person from the States who pretend to be the girl from Donbass, posed a Russian Jew from the occupied Ukrainian city of Luhansk, and geopolitics expert of all people. She is known that she finds 100,000 idiots online who believe that she is a girl from Donbass. And just because she's good looking, they will keep sending her money. She should be investigated and in jail for a fraud and the crimes she committed as being US military, helping Russia to undermine and attack United States. And Tucker Carlson is not the only Western journalist to repeat Russian propaganda. Stephen Brill Gordon Krovitz has found more than 350 news sites promoting 100 false narratives about Russian war in Ukraine. And this article was published in June 2nd, 2023. So now it's way more than that. I first time catch Russians on the posting propaganda during when they started the war in Ukraine in 2014. It wasn't just propaganda. Russia also organized international forum of Nazi parties from several different countries, which Russian government paid for to come, paid for their hotels, and organized that forum to teach them how to disrupt their life in their countries and pushing their narrative about Russian attack on Ukraine. It was a Russian attack on Ukraine, and you would see several videos in my playlist, The War in Ukraine 2014. It was about Crimea, 6 videos, and the video about Donbass, which without any doubt you will find out what happened there and how Russian hybrid occupation and 73,000 troops of Russian army invaded independent country of Ukraine and took their territory. So I really recommend to read this article, and especially as an economist, they were saying about how Russian economy is in a horrible shape. You cannot trust any information from Russian government about Russian economy and about the companies who left Russia, which Russia pretended that bunch of Russian companies are pretended to be foreign companies which kind of stayed in Russia and choose to stay in Russia. Many countries really left Russia and wants to leave Russia, but Russia just don't allow them. She holding hostage their assets and not even intend to return it to the foreign companies who have that assets, that money and that property and that equipment they have in Russia. Russia just grabbed it. Many countries will have to stay in line for years to be able to get out of Russia. Some of them left, but some just can't. Unless Russia just take their assets, and okay, yeah, you're welcome to leave now. So this is a really good article. I really recommend. Another Time article, Inside the Kremlin's Year of Ukraine Propaganda. This article written by Vera Bergengruen on February 22nd, 2023. Really good article. It mentions lots of warfare which Russia did. For example, that 3 weeks after Russia invaded Ukraine, in the February 24th, video appeared on Ukrainian news site that seems to show President Vladimir Zelensky imploring his fellow countrymen to stop fighting and urging soldiers to lay down their weapons. There is no need to die in this war, he seems to say in the video. I advise you to leave. So it was a deep fake video and of Ukrainian President Zelensky, and highlights a border campaign aimed at sowing doubt, spreading false narratives, and undermining support for Ukraine globally. This is a screenshot from that video. And Russia employed various tactics, including fake accounts, deep fakes like this video, and forged documents targeting diverse audiences worldwide. The information what took place on digital platforms, with social media, especially Telegram, playing a significant role. The report emphasizes that Russia's impact goes beyond the conflict, affecting debates on supporting Ukraine and leveraging global sympathies particularly from China. The long-term effects of disinformation operations are expected to persist beyond the current war. For Ukraine, the current war is also digital. It's not just war on the battlefield. In Ukraine, fighting it since 2014. I find lots of, Ukraine was really surprised when it all started to happen. It was fire hose of propaganda from Russia. From inventing things, completely inventing that, the boy who was nailed to the cross in Ukraine. Nothing like that happened ever in Ukraine. And unless Russia is doing right now, they did a lot of things right now. But at the time, Ukraine had to create whole videos, and I posted it on my channel, video with 75 fakes disproved by Ukraine. When the fire in the Volgograd region where I'm from, Russia posing as a Ukrainian government burning the fields in Ukraine to starve its own people or something like that. And when the pictures of wounded boy from Syria and Russia is pretending it's in Ukraine and so on. Russia created customized messages for different global audiences. And the effectiveness of Russian messages in some parts of the world is quite huge. Russia used lots of information warfare tactics, utilized various strategies to defend its actions, sowed doubt about news, and push misleading narratives to undercut support for Ukraine, like that article of Schuster I showed you today in Time magazine. Russia targeted diverse audiences globally, from Ukrainian citizens to groups in the US, Europe, and beyond. Techniques Russia include fake accounts, deepfakes, forged documents, and fake news, and even mimicking reputable brands. And the goal what Russian propaganda is pursuing is strangle sympathy and support for Ukraine. Right now, when Putin is losing war for Ukraine, it will be even more. Everywhere. Every Russian troll, every pro-Putin politician, which was either bribed or just not smart enough or ignorant, they will be all used to support Putin and Putin narratives. And it's a broad campaign of disinformation and propaganda. And Russian pro-Kremlin activists all throughout those 9 years of the war using that to spread Russian propaganda. This is also an interesting article, how Putin is losing at his own disinformation game in Ukraine, by the same author, Vera Bergengruen. I hope I pronounce her name right. And it's all very important to read and know how it is all done. And huge impact has social media, especially Telegram. It was played crucial role in the information battle. And Russia tried to demoralize Ukraine, undermine trust in Zelensky, and I even heard from some Ukrainians that it's shaking their trust in their leader. And right now, especially with the politician Arestovich, he really helped to attack on Ukraine and on Zelensky and undermining Ukraine. Right now, lots of disinformation would be about, it's about Ukrainians, corrupted country, they stealing our aid. This is not true. I'll probably make different video on that matter, but this is not true. It's proven wrong. And also, Russia combined digital efforts with traditional tactics, intimidation tactics, like leaflets that they throw in near nuclear power plants saying, what to do during nuclear power plant disaster, just scaring people. Military trainings, rumors, nuclear weapon speculations, and so on. And those false narratives spread globally, including allegations about US-funded bioweapons labs, invented conspiracies, and so on, about the strike on maternity hospital in Ukraine, like, Ukrainians did it to themselves. And the first, even from Russians, I heard a lot of information that, we don't bombing civilians, no, Ukrainians bombing themselves, and so on. All of this targeting Ukraine on information on the front of the informational war. Meanwhile, Russia blocked Western social media platforms, basically saying that Facebook and Meta and so on are spreading propaganda and they are Nazis and this and that and so on. And criminalized independent reporting. All the independent journalists left Russia, and Russia deliberately targeting Russian diaspora abroad. And Russia will continue using these techniques in ongoing debates about supporting Ukraine, and may even leverage China global media sympathy for its interests. As about long-term impact, Russia's reputation as information warriors might be challenged in the West, but the impact of information operations related to the war is expected to persist beyond the current war in Ukraine. Russia will continue doing it, and we have to be aware of that, and we have to be ready to understand what's happening and verify information. Even if it's come from reliable source, or you think it is reliable source, they could be wrong. They also could spread false information, and Russian propaganda. So please verify your information and make sure that you critically thinking about what you're reading and what you're watching. If somebody trying to create narrative, try to be able to understand where it's coming from and how reliable it is. So verify the source, verify the author, first of all. If one or the other is not good, just don't even bother to read or watch whatever they're offering to you. Think for yourself, use critical thinking, and use the information I gave you, how to verify that information. Even if you just Google somebody, just even look in the Wikipedia, and it says that they say, oh, in 2014 they said Crimea taken by Russia and Russia has rights to do that. That is it. There is no point to listen or watch that person anymore, because they're wrong and the history proved them wrong, and now we know what happened in Crimea in 2014. We maybe didn't know back then, but we do know now. For absolute sure, no question about it. The war in Ukraine, one of the most documented wars in history of mankind. It's proven fact. What's happening there is no question about it. And if somebody in this day and age still don't know it, then there is no point to listen to them. Thank you for your attention. Have a great day. And until next time, learn the truth and stay informed. See you later.